Earlier this year, we put our pick of the hottest hot hatches under 60 grand to the test to see which was the fastest and which was the most fun and engaging. The fastest on track was this, the Ford Focus RS Limited Edition. And the most fun and engaging, and funnily enough, the second fastest on track, was this, the Honda Civic Type R. But the big question many of you wanted to know was, where's the new Renault Megane RS?
Well, it's finally here, the new and third generation Megane RS, once the benchmark for all hot hatches in terms of its driver engagement. And we want to find out how it stacks up against our mega test winners, the Focus RS and the Civic Type R.
Mate, first up, I love the look of this thing. It looks awesome.
Particularly in this colour, tonic yellow. But I'll tell you what, I don't think it looks quite as distinctive as the previous generation car. Good reason for that. These guys are going after Golf GTI, and why wouldn't you?
Exactly, but I still think it looks the most expensive of the three cars we have, yet it is the cheapest car we have here.
Yeah, absolutely. More mature, certainly, than the other two.
Speaking of maturity, you've never been the biggest fan of the looks of the Civic Type R.
I haven't, mate, and I still am not, because of the one thing on that car, the rear wing. I'm not even sure it's needed.
Mate, in its defence, I saw one in Tokyo recently, and in Tokyo, it looked $1 million, but here in regional Victoria,
nah,
I'm not so sure.
Nah, mate.
And mate, then you got the, I suppose the tough one of the three, Focus RX. Looks-wise, it just looks right.
See that thing coming up behind you in the rear vision mirror, and you know that thing's going to do some damage.
Not wrong.
These are three of the hottest hatches available right now, but they go about their work in quite different ways. They're all 4 cylinders and all turbocharged, but where the new Megane RS produces 205 kilowatts and 390 newton meters from its 1.8 litre engine, the Type R fits the middle child description with a 228 kilowatt, 400 newton meter 2 litre unit, and the Focus RS trumps both with power and displacement. 2.3 litres, 257 kilowatts, 440 newton meters, and all-wheel drive, where the Megane and the Civic rely on very trick diffs to put power through the front wheels. Power is one thing, but these are hatchbacks, and they need to be practical and easy to live with every day. While the previous generation Megane RS was touted as a hatchback, in reality it was more of a coupe. This new generation Megane RS brings with it true hatch dimensions and practicality. A 5-door layout with a large rear opening, reasonably big boot, excellent accommodation in the second row, and supportive and comfy seats up front. The new interior is classy, and the levels of gadgets, tech and connectability are excellent. The Civic Type R is verging on wagon levels of practicality with a truly huge boot and superb second row accommodation. Up front, the seats are some of the best in the business, and the actual seating position is unmatched in this class. The overall look is sporty and far more understated than its exterior, and the levels of tech are good, but it's just starting to feel a touch old. The Focus has the smallest boot of all three cars here, due to the all-wheel drive system robbing some space. Even the Fiesta ST has a bigger boot. Space in the second row is a touch on the cramped side compared to the Civic and Megane, and the race car style Recaros up front are incredibly supportive and comfy once you're in, but for anyone over 6 foot tall, they're positioned too high and there's no height adjustment. Ford's Sync 3 infotainment system is excellent, but the rest of the interior is starting to feel its age. So here's how it's going to work. As the Focus RS and the Civic Type R came first and second in the track component of our mega test, our pro driver Andrew Jones will set lap times in both, and then he'll put the Megane through its paces to see how it compares. Then tomorrow, as the Type R took out the more subjective which hot hatch is the most fun and engaging element of the mega test, Tony and I will put the Type R and Megane head to head on exactly the same roads as we used before to see if the Type R can hold on to its most fun and engaging crown. I should note that we've decided to let the Focus sit out the which car is more fun and engaging element of this comparison. Why? Well, in part 2 of our mega test, the ballistic Focus actually came a surprising 4th as the most fun and engaging car. It was the fastest, yes, but check out the video for why we thought the Type R, an upstart Hyundai, and a classy German were just more fun on the road.
Without further ado, let's get to the track.
To keep this test as consistent with our mega test as possible, we're back at Winton Raceway. Same circuit and same driver, but Mother Nature clearly didn't read the email, so rather than the bone dry and high 30s we had previously, it's now torrentially wet with temperatures in the low teens. Far from ideal, but let's just treat these as real-world conditions.
I'm back inside the Ford Focus RS. We've just started our flying lap. Tricky conditions in these greasy wetness. And as we come through turn 2, the circuit is very slippery on the outside, and that's where the four-wheel drive in this car comes to the fore. Pretty hard to tell from the cameras on board here, but I can guarantee you through the seat and the steering wheel, I'm getting heaps of feeling that this car is moving around, but it's giving me lots of confidence. All in all, the car feels pretty planted, or very planted on the road. Little slide, there we go. Push the throttle down a little bit harder, pull me out of the slide, there we go. And again, really controlled drift inside this car and from the driver's seat. Again, get that slide happening and just crack the throttle open to pull the car back straight. That's a really nice feeling. But the Ford Focus RS, again, delivers in terms of grip, confidence, and also in terms of just telling the driver what's happening underneath it. Pretty cool car. Being front wheel drive, I expected the car to understeer quite a little bit when I got on the gas, but must be to do with the torque curve or the power delivery or something. But man, it's really easy in these slippery, tricky conditions to get those front wheels spinning. And soon as the front wheels start to spin with any amount of steering lock on, there we go there, I've just done it again, it just understeers across the road. It lights those tyres up. It feels like they go from doing 10, 15, 20 k's an hour on the road to trying to spin at about 60 k's an hour at the wheels. So it's this weird feeling, but when it starts to spin those wheels, it just takes all front grip away. So I'm being very, very gentle on that throttle input and delivering the power to the tyre. I almost need to wait until I'm almost in a dead straight line before I start to get on the throttle. In terms of steering in these conditions, the car feels pretty good. It gives me lots of feedback, if not probably too much feedback, and that's what I'm feeling when I get on that throttle. So it's not a bad thing, but it's just a lot of, I guess, information being fired at me in what is quite tricky conditions. I still get that same feeling that I got when I drove the car in the dry, and that is that there is bucket loads of power at my disposal. And in the dry, that was really cool and a great feeling. And everyday road driving, it'll be a pretty nice thing to have. But in this sort of condition, as I just drive across that slippery ice patch, I've really, really got to have my wits about me. Aesthetically, I don't mind it. I think it looks pretty cool. From a driving point of view, it's certainly got my attention, that's for sure. A couple of quirky little, I guess, can I call them Frenchisms when I jump inside the car and sit in the driver's seat is, first off, the pedals are quite frankly a little bit weird. The throttle and the brake sit at the correct height or the same height as each other, but the clutch, when I get off the clutch, fully off, sits about this much higher back towards me than the brake and the throttle, and sort of messing with my mind a little bit, because normally when you get in a car, all three pedals sit in line with each other. So when you go to take your left foot off the clutch, there's something for me in where my right foot is sitting on the brake or the throttle that tells me the correct height to remove my foot off that clutch. And it's taken a little bit to get used to. Sounds really bizarre, I'm sure, for me to explain it, but it does feel quite weird. The other thing that's it's a little bit odd is the electric steering rack, which becoming more and more standard in road-going cars these days, but also the four-wheel steer. So, hues of the old Honda Prelude from the late 80s, early 90s, where the rear wheels will actually help the car steer. That combined with the electric rack, the steering in this car is super, super sensitive. I feel like I actually think about turning in at the corner, and I've hardly moved the steering wheel or my hands on the steering wheel, and all of a sudden the car is going where I want it to go. So I have this, I'm getting this feeling and this feedback that I turn the wheel and then I stop turning the wheel to just work out what's going to happen, how's the car going to react, have I turned too much, have I not turned enough. So I think that will take a little bit of getting used to in terms of driving the car. Same issue that the Civic Type R had, and that is that front wheel drive, trying to deliver the power in these conditions is pretty tricky, and that axle tramp or that feeling, I just got it there. When I get on the throttle, soon as the front wheels start to spin, I just instantaneously lose grip from the front of the car, and you know, it's quite an unnerving feeling, but my natural reaction is to take my foot off the throttle, and then, you know, you have this fight that then all of a sudden the car grips up. So something to get used to, but it's probably the power delivery is a little bit nicer for me driving it in these conditions versus the Honda.
So guys, before I reveal the fastest, mate, I think in these conditions it's still got to be the all-drive Focus. What do you guys reckon?
I mean, should be, absolutely. Four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive in this sort of slippery condition should nail it every time.
Tony?
100%, mate.
Guys,
100%.
with a time of a 1:52.12, Focus RS is still the fastest, still the king. It's going to take some beating for this sort of money to get, but like quicker than that in these conditions. I don't know what's going to come to topple its crown.
I don't reckon it'll be miles ahead though. I tried to push on hard in that car because it gave me heaps of confidence, but it's almost limited braking wise, and I can't help but feel like the tyre that it's on is the bit that's the indicating factor rather than all the electronics in it.
Cup 2, the same as a GT3 Porsche, so they really set up for a dry track, those tyres, aren't they?
Yeah, and grip limited in these sort of conditions.
Yeah. Second place, what are we thinking, Megane or Civic?
I tell you what, with Megane coming in with new products like four-wheel steer and that damper control, I would have thought the Megane would give the Type R a run for its money.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Megane purely on the fact that the power delivery felt better in it than the Honda, and in these conditions, a little less power generally provides a better lap time for me.
Well, second place, obviously, 1:52.44, only a smidge behind the Focus, Civic Type R.
There you go.
Still second quickest on track.
It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
What do you put that down to?
Well, I'm going to throw my credibility hat in the bin because I would have picked that it was the Megane all day long because the power and the wheel spin that I had from the front wheel drive Honda felt really, really bad.
Tyres wise, do you think the tyres is what is killing, or not killing the time, but is why the Civic's so much quicker?
Yeah, I have to feel like that. Yep, absolutely, because like I said before, for me, the grip was limited at the tyre more so than the electronics and the four-wheel drive being able to do their thing with the RS, and maybe that's why it feels a little bit closer. If I think back to when we were here for the 6-car test in the dry, that car was light years ahead, and you know, that tyre is pretty much produced.
Exactly.
It's for dry conditions, isn't it? And you can use the corner speed, whereas at the moment, I don't even feel like you can turn the car hard enough and use what's underneath it mechanical-wise.
Megane 1:56.23, so it's a bit off. It's actually a bit off even the Civic in these conditions. Yeah, it's surprising. Well, Tony, you and I have the Megane and the Civic tomorrow. Predictions for on-road?
I tell you what, I've never been a fan of Type R, but I reckon the Type R's. I'm falling more for that car, and I thought I'd be more into the RS, but I'm not even sold on the looks of the RS.
No, I think the Civic might win you over tomorrow. We had it on Mega Test and it was epic. So
yeah.
Let's wait and see what tomorrow brings. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Cool.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me along. Cool cars.
All right, so we've gone from a 2 litre down to a 1.8 litre, but we've got more power now. And I tell you what, you can feel that out of the corners. I tell you what, this 1.8 litre Turbo 4 has got some genuine punch. And the mid-range torque is very strong too. In fact, out of a corner is where this thing, I think, beats the Type R. Just got more punch, and that exhaust note with that punch offers a fairly engaging experience, and it's fun too. The Megane RS is definitely quicker in the steering department, but I won't say it's better. There's certainly less effort when you're into a corner like this, but I think the Type R feels less nervous. This is a lot of fun to drive. I think you can drive it slightly quicker than the Type R. I really believe that. But is it a more engaging drive than the Type R? Can't tell you, it's close. Now, if there was ever a negative for Megane RS generations of past, it was the firm ride. Now, I'll say that this is still a firm ride, but it's slightly better than the previous generation. It's slightly more compliant, but it's still a busy ride, and you still feel it. I'm being jiggled around as I talk to you here.
Seating position is just phenomenal, and the seat, not only comfort but support, is great. I've done freeway kilometres in this thing and it's really, really comfy, but then when you up it for the rent through some corners, you're still so locked in and you just hunkered down. Just phenomenal. Massive standout, and I know Tony's a big fan of this, is this gear change. It's mechanical, it's got real conviction to it, it's so notchy, it's almost that Honda S2000 kind of feel. It's definitely a winner over the Megane. The Megane still has a quick gear change, but just the accuracy, it makes you want to change all the time. The steering, look, it's not as quick as the Renault. That four-wheel steering system has totally won me over, but it's still really accurate, really precise. There's a good amount of feel and communication coming through the wheel, but I think the Renault's got it for steering. So we've already discussed the looks, and it does look very boy racer, and then you look at that rubber and it's so thin and you think, well, it's going to ride like a horse and cart, but this thing in comfort mode is probably the most comfortable of all the hot hatches. It's smooth, it hides all the bumps and any imperfections in the road surface, but genuinely a comfortable car. On the freeway it's fantastic, but then flick it into sport and everything tightens up, but it's still not uncomfortable. It's not harsh or abrasive or aggressive, it just absorbs everything, but just tightens up the overall feel. Just incredible. It's such an engaging car to drive. For me, the whole aura or the whole meaning behind a hot hatch is extracting performance out of a car that really probably shouldn't have that level of performance, and this thing is just just brilliant. I'm not wanting for more power either. It's the perfect amount of power for what this thing is. It's so so good.
I'll tell you what, I've never really been a fan of the Civic Type R. It's a bit too out there in its looks, but we'll get to that in a minute. But the driving position, well, that's something I'm not going to criticise. In fact, I'm going to absolutely sing its praises, because I'm not having to think about what I do. The ergonomics are so perfect. The shift action is so magnificent that the throws appear to be the shortest I've ever experienced in a hot hatch. That's exactly what you want, because I'm not having to think about where my hand goes. Beautiful. So what do I think about the steering in the Type R? Well, it's not as fast as the Megane RS. That's at another level, but it is solid and it is direct. And I'd have to say I've got no complaints. I mean, it sounds like a race car, to be honest. Right up it, especially when you're up for the rent. Except for the looks, and we've discussed that before, I'm genuinely struggling to find negatives with this Type R. In fact, I'm really starting to have a lot of fun with it, to be honest.
So Renault have downsized this engine, but you certainly couldn't tell. This thing has still got plenty of muscle. The difference between the Civic and the Renault, but is that the Civic's power delivery, I think, just feels a bit more linear. I think you've got a little bit more to play with sort of mid-range, but at the top end, they're both fantastic. They're both singing. Tough split. Again, really hard to pick them apart. This four-wheel steering system is absolutely brilliant. When you're mid-corner, feeling that back want to come around, it's not like an oversteery sort of feel. It just brings the back around. It's a little bit hard to get used to, but once you're used to it, the pace you can carry through corners is incredible. I think the Civic's bite and turn in and maybe acceleration out might have the edge, but mid-corner, it's the Renault. The shift in the Megane, Look, it's good, it's easy, it just doesn't have that same level of mechanical engagement that the Honda's got, which sort of adds to the entire enthusiasm of the Honda. It's still a really good shift, it just, yeah, just not quite as tactile. The seats are fantastic, they're really supportive and they're really comfy on a long trip, but the actual seating position, I can't get it quite right. It's just, the balance just isn't quite there like it is in the Civic. The ride is really firm. Yes, it's the sportier of the two chassis options, but it's a bit too firm. The only thing that really upsets this fantastic steering is how much you're bouncing around the road. It's just nowhere near as compliant as the Civic. My biggest issue in this car is the bloody pedals. The clutch pedal is so much higher than the brake and accelerator pedal. So when you're coming off the clutch, you think you're off the clutch, but you're not. You've almost got to lift your leg up and over it. And then if you're going from the dead pedal onto the clutch, again, you have to lift your leg up to go onto the clutch. And the take-up point for a brand new car is quite high. So you're obviously going to get used to it, but initially it's pretty hard to modulate. I think for this car, I was really hoping for more of a revolution than an evolution, but it is an evolution over the previous models. And I've been lucky enough to own some of those previous models, and they were exceptionally great cars. And this is phenomenal, but it's a bit better than the other ones, which is still saying something because they were great cars. You can tell that they're going for more of a Golf GTI, Golf R market than the niche market that Renault Sport have previously gone for, but it is great. I was hoping for it to be the new benchmark, and I don't know if it is. So a couple of huge days, mate, out of these two. Who's your winner?
Oh, mate, for me, it's just got to be the Type R. It is just such the complete driving package with almost zero negatives for me. Yeah. You know, except that friggin' wing. Yeah. You know?
I'm the same. It's the tiniest of margins. Like, if the Civics are 100%, the Megane is 99%. For me, the only thing that I didn't like is that bloody clutch placement.
Oh, and the ride.
Yeah, the ride's pretty firm as well.
Come on, it's firm. It's really firm.
The Civic just does everything right. It's that little bit more engaging. It's that little bit more fun. And it's not saying anything bad about the Renault. It is an exceptional car. But yeah, Civic Type R for the winner. But mate, which one would you buy?
It's right over there, pal. And it's called a Ford Focus RS Limited Edition. I love the power. The deal breaker for me on the Type R is the rear wing. I just don't think you need that wing, and I think it looks a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. Mate, for me, I think I want to see the Renault in my garage. I love
After all that.
I know. I love the Type R, but it's just, I just can't get my head around the looks. It's growing on me, but I want to see that in the garage rather than that. It's just a little bit too boy race.
It's a bit of a shame, isn't it?
It is. It's the more fun and more engaging car. But Tony's taking the Focus, I'm taking the Renault, so I know what that says. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And to check out the full written piece on the comparison of these three cars, jump on caradvice.com.au. Also, jump on YouTube and caradvice.com.au to check out our full hot hatch mega test videos. See you next time.